Alright, so today I'm going to go over the updates for the new patch for Battlegrounds. This is one of the minor patches they have throughout a season. Nothing too big, just some updates to some overtune cards and buffing up a little bit of underperforming cards. So to start off with, we have Cinderai Straight Shot, now only appear in games with Undead, which is a really good thing because the card didn't really have that much use in games with Undead. There are some Reborn cards, with beasts having undead and certain heroes being able to create undead minions as well, but for the most part, really not a very useful card without undead in. Archdruid Hamul being removed back into the pool. This card refreshed the shop with minions of the most common type, so this could be really good for getting a full board of Murlocs if you're playing Murlocs, Pirates if you're playing Apian Pirates, Ellies if you're playing, Nomi or something like that. A very strong card, but it seems like it'll only be around until the next big patch. And then we have our first nerf, Ghoul the Feast. It used to give +2 attack to each friendly minion type, but it was only Avenge 1 before, and now it's Avenge 2 with 1 more health to compensate for the nerf in the ability, and also it gives +3 attack. And I think this is a pretty big change in terms of mitigating the damage and tempo that this card has early to mid on, but I think it's still quite powerful, and we'll see it in certain mid-game builds. Then we have another nerf, Legion Overseer. So basically they just nerfed the HP of it to 2. I don't think this will impact the rate this is choose too much. This is still gonna be a really premium card to pick up whenever you go to tier 3 on turn 3. And if you're playing any sort of demon build, this is still very solid, buffing up the minions that you consume. And then probably one of the most problematic cards that were introduced, Chronormu, got a nerf as well. It went up a tier and the stats were increased a little bit to compensate, but there's still probably going to be some problems with this. Varden is still really strong with this, but you'll have to go up to tier 5 instead of being on tier 4. And it's still a way to consolidate your stats into one minion. It'll just be slightly hard to find, but still I believe this will be a staple. And then we have Magma Lock. The second nerf of this card has gone through. It used to be a tier 4 3/3, and now it is a tier 5 1/1. It'll still be a really good card. I'll probably think a little more about it when you're picking it up in the mid game without much support. Then we have Vanessa Van Cleef. Stats of it got nerfed a little bit. The text is still the same. I didn't really think this was too much of a problem, but whenever I played this card and I had pirates to go with it already, like Hogger, Salty, Peggy, Ball, and Minions, I just noticed that, it gave a little too much tempo, and it's also still really good permanent scaling. And even to the point of this a lot of times being able to attack twice and buff itself twice and maybe whatever's left over, it's probably warranted. It just didn't really seem like a culprit. And then moving on to the buffs, Jelly Belly got a slight improvement on the health, +1 health. Still not really that good of a card. I feel like it's kind of just something you pick up if you had an early undead start and just to get a little stronger going into mid game, but very, very much doesn't really fit into late game builds. And the tempo, it's more in line with probably what Ghoul of Feast is now, but I mean, I think the difference between them is still kind of high. Like, Ghoul of Feast is just a lot better. We have another buff, Ground Shaker, got the stats of it increased by quite a bit, +1, +2. I think what this will do is it'll just make it more likely that you'll want to pick this up if you have just a little bit of gem synergy, but I think the card will still be mostly kind of niche because 3 isn't really that good of a stat line to pick it up without any support whatsoever, but I might see this being played a little bit more. And then we're going on to, I believe this is another buff as well. Have after you summon a minion in combat, give +3 attack instead of 2, and then a slight nerf to the health to compensate for that. But this is basically like pre-nerf what it used to be. I forget if the health was 7 or 8 when this card came out, but this used to be +3 attack. So it got nerfed and then it got rebuffed again. I'm not a huge fan of this change. I think you can easily get first or second with this card now. And I'm not really liking tempo cards that can do that. Like, I think if you're going to build around this, it shouldn't be super easy for you to just kill people and end the lobby early enough for you to win, but I think we'll be seeing that more now that the power of this card basically got increased by 50%, especially with some of the stat scaling cards getting nerfed, like Magma Lock and like Legion. And then here we have, I don't think this is technically a nerf or a buff, it's just a rework. They are changing Grease Spot to be back to tier 4. It's a 3/6, which I believe was its stat line originally before they moved it to tier 6, and now it's a +2/+1. And this card actually, when it got introduced, I think this was the card text of it, and it got nerfed pretty quickly, but now that the game has, you know, gotten power crept a little bit, I think they decided this is okay, and I personally like it. I think with this change, mechs on tier 4 will be quite strong. Scaling like Deflectos and mech rolls has always been kind of a problem. There are quite a bit ways to counter it now with Ghoul the Feast and Fell Stomper and some other tribes that can summon a lot of minions like Undead. They can potentially beat low HP mechs, but this is the one that I'm not sure will be okay or not. It could be way too much to handle, just like it was before, but I'm excited for this change to also shake up the mech lobbies. So yeah, that's all the Battlegrounds changes. I think for this overall patch, it won't really shake things up too much. I expect there to be a little bit more basically movement to higher tempo builds because Grease Spot and Fell Stomper got buffed, and they are a little easier to build around and go into the late game than Ghoul the Feast. I think Ghoul the Feast was not really something you could keep going with for too long, but these two are a lot easier to build around, and yeah, and overall, yeah, it's really not going to change that much stuff. I know a lot of streamers and content creators haven't been enjoying BGs too much lately. Really not sure if that's going to change, but yeah, I mean, worth a shot, and then hopefully there will be something even more to shake up the game in a few weeks.